Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. This is Gina. Well, Nancy Pelosi pulled a Trump. She tried to gaslight the American people, you and I, into basically not believing our own eyes, ears, and bank accounts. She's trying to rewrite history to make everyone believe that the corrupt Ways and Means Chairman, Richard Neal, is a champion for the people. He's all about doing what's right as a public servant. She's also trying to dangle the carrot of Trump's tax returns to get Democrats to vote for this snake. She, in an interview, said the following: when we win this election and we have a new president of the United States in January, and we have a new Secretary of the Treasury, and Richie Neal asks for the president's returns, then the world will see what the president has been hiding all of this time. In terms of dealing with the courts now, he has been strong and persistent and doing exactly what the lawyers say that we have to do in order to prevail. He could not do anything more. Bullshit. Absolute, complete and utter bullshit. He has had 4 years almost. He was cleared to request Trump's taxes. He did nothing. He waited until after Trump signed a piece of legislation that he wanted strictly for the purpose of making one of his donors happy. Then he moved forward in his request for Trump's tax returns. But only then. I'm sorry, I have absolutely zero faith that if and when Trump is out of office, that the Democrats are going to take any action. I would bet you money right now that the Democrats will, as always, fail. They will, as always, chicken out. They're not going to do what we all want them to do. They're going to fumble. They're going to use the excuse that, well, you don't want to make it a habit and make it the norm that one administration goes after another administration for wrongdoing, because then the Republicans can do it to the next Democratic president. Wait and see. They will not go after him after he's out of office. I can almost guarantee it. If they had that frame of mind, they would have gone after Bush. He's a freaking war criminal who lied us into war. He lied us into a war without provocation and manufactured consent for it in the media, saying that there were weapons of mass destruction when they knew, he and his administration knew that that was not the truth. He and Dick Cheney, he and Bill Kristol, the people on MSNBC just love and fawn over. All of those war criminals walked, and Pelosi was one of the ones that allowed them to walk. So no, I don't buy it that she's waiting until he's out of office. Not for a second. But beyond that, Neal is as corrupt as they come, and he is completely in the pocket of big banks and other big industries that screw over average Americans constantly. So let's take a walk down memory lane. Let's look at Neal's history in public life and see what a champion for the people he really is. So this was really great reporting by The Intercept. They talked about, first of all, Neal was elected as mayor of Springfield in 1983, and he held that position for 4 years. While Neal was in that position, he basically gutted the city's coffers, and he made some very suspect investments with taxpayer money, leaving them broke. In fact, it was so bad that in 1989, the governor at the time, Mike Dukakis, launched an investigation that resulted in what's now known as the Cook Report. So a man named Newell Cook, he was once a Department of Revenue auditor. He led the investigation into Neal's actions and how the city ended up essentially bankrupt. What he and his team found was that the health insurance system for the city's employees was systematically underfunded. They determined through their research and reported that Neal's government, everyone in his government, were completely unrealistic in determining how much projects would cost and how to calculate future expenses. So for example, they said that between 1986 and 1987, the true costs of everything were rising between 20 to 30%, but Neal's team only budgeted for a 5% increase. So you say, okay, well, they were inept, but that's not necessarily corrupt. Okay, well, they cooked the books. They cooked the books to make it appear as though the budget was balanced. But in the end, they ended up having to lay off over 850 city employees. And as I mentioned, the city was facing bankruptcy. And in addition to all of that, Neal launched these major initiatives that in the moment, they were really popular with his constituents. So for example, he undertook projects to beautify the city. Part of that was planting flowers around town. He started a litter reduction program, among other things. Now that sounds really nice, right? Okay, well, it would have been nice if he had the money to pay for it, but he didn't. And he didn't tell anyone. And instead, Neal, basically what they found was he bled the city dry. He gave no bid contracts to people that he was friends with. So in 1989, the Springfield City Council opened an investigation into a contract that Neal signed with a man who was later convicted on public corruption charges. So this man's name is Paul Tinsley, and he was the founder of a consultant company called Insurance Cost Control. Neal alleged that he hired Tinsley, or his company, I should say, to reduce insurance costs for the city. But through the investigation, they found that the city paid $480,000 to this company, to Insurance Cost Control, under a no-bid contract, which means that Neal didn't shop it around. He didn't look around to see who could do it for less. He gave it to his buddy. So he signed this no-bid contract with Tinsley's company, and later the Springfield City Council determined that Insurance Cost Control saved the city not one single dollar. So he gave him $500,000. And remember, this is back in the 80s. So that would be much more in today's money. And it didn't do a damn thing. Didn't help the city whatsoever. There was also a grand jury investigation into additional contracts made with Springfield while Neal was the mayor, some of which included contracts with another one of Neal's longtime buddies, a man named Charlie Kingston. Now, by the time that, the grand jury issue was going, Neal had already been elected to Congress. So he was already out as mayor and he was already in Congress. So ultimately, no charges were brought against any of the players involved in all this. But he clearly was playing fast and loose with taxpayer money. So Neal, as I mentioned, he left the city with a major deficit. The next mayor had to deal with that. But once he got to Congress, he didn't stop. His dirty dealings did not stop. So as reported by The Intercept, Neal opposed the Government Securities Offering Enforcement Act. Now, this was a bill that people believe he opposed due to the large sums of money that he received from the banking industry. And the bill, which was brought by Ed Markey in 1991, it would have prevented investment companies from misleading investors with deceptive marketing practices about government-backed securities. Why would you block that? Also reported by The Intercept are these little gems about Neal's corruption to appease his wealthy banking donors. So here's what they wrote, quote, in 1995, Neal voted for the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act, which attempted to bar shareholders from suing companies for securities fraud. Great. He then voted yes on an override of Bill Clinton's veto of the bill, and in 2000 voted yes again on the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, opening the floodgates for investors to engage in the kind of risky derivatives trading that led to the 2008 crash. Thanks, Richie Neal. They go on to say in 2002, amid the fallout of the Enron scandal, Neal voted against an amendment to the Corporate and Auditing Accountability, Responsibility, and Transparency Act, which would have cleared the way for regular audits of publicly traded companies by the SEC. So if that act had been put through, it would have saved how many countless people from losing their entire livelihood, being destroyed by that whole Enron scandal. Once again, thanks, Richie Neal. And of course, Neal voted for the $700 billion bank bailout in the Great Recession of 2008, which led to not one prison sentence for corrupt bank executives who helped to crash the economy and destroyed millions of Americans' lives. But what it did do was it gave a lot of those bank executives their golden parachutes. Many of them got massive bonuses that year. Neal also sponsored a bill in 2016, which would have made it easier for financial advisors to push people with savings accounts into high-risk investments. So his bill was meant essentially to undermine consumer protections that Obama had put in place. And the Globe reported that it would have protected Neal's bill, meaning Neal's bill would have protected the company called Mass Mutual, which is one of Neal's largest donors. Surprise. So shocked. Oh, it goes on though. The Intercept also noted that Neal has received hundreds of thousands in donations from these very banks that he protects and doles out billions of our tax dollars to, including AIG, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Chase, and many, many others. And of course, Neal voted for the most recent bailout, the big giveaway to corporation, the CARES Act, which included little to no oversight, right? I mean, there's very little to no oversight on how that money is and was spent, and it failed to protect workers over the long term. So the Intercept reported, quote, it throws cash hand over fist to bail out CEOs without any guarantees for the essential workers struggling to make ends meet in the midst of a global pandemic. Nurses at hospitals across the 1st Congressional District are being forced to use vacation time for coronavirus-related sick leave, face 12-hour shift requirements, work with up to 50% cuts to cleaning staff, crucial to life-saving hospital sanitation, and report unsafe working conditions. So that's his district, the 1st Congressional District in Massachusetts. They also spoke with nurses throughout Western Massachusetts who reported, quote, layoffs, intimidation, lack of PPE, and unsafe working conditions, including being forced to work between COVID wards and general hospital populations without adequate time or supplies to safely disinfect. So the nurses there are pissed. Members of the Massachusetts Nurses Association even started picketing Mercy Hospital in Springfield recently due to these unsafe working conditions. So they're complaining about that, unfair compensation, unfair bargaining practices. And now, good news, they have endorsed Neal's opponent, Alex Morse. Yeah, Neal needs to go. He's scum. And of course, there's the issue that I've brought up on this show several times about how he opposed an end to surprise medical billing. He was the only one to vote against it. And this was a bipartisan bill. It wasn't like it was just Democrats. Republicans wanted this too, because it's so outrageous. It's so unconscionable the way these facilities and medical practitioners gouge people. This bill would have prevented them from billing people obscene amounts of money when they have no control over whether or not the services they're receiving or the person who's treating them is in or out of network with their insurance company. So why did he do that? Well, executives at a company called Blackstone donated almost $50,000 to Neal in 2019, just shortly before that bill came up for a vote. So who's Blackstone? They apparently oversee a group of businesses that make out like bandits when it comes to surprise medical billing. Yeah, big shock again, I know. He does not work in the interests of the people. It is time for him to go. Just as with all of these other incumbents across the country, just because you have a D behind your name does not mean you're a good person, does not mean you're doing the right thing. Neal has to go. So September 1st is when their primary is taking place. Again, his opponent is Alex Morse. He is a Justice Democrat, tried and true progressive. He is for Medicare for all. He's for the Green New Deal. He's for many, many other incredible progressive policies that we need, especially right now. So if you are in Massachusetts, in that first district, please go out, vote for Alex Morse, kick Neal to the curb. It is way past due. He is not there for you, not any way, shape, or form. So, all right, guys, as always, like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thanks for listening to Plants and Politics. The only way we can take our country and power back is to spread the truth and build an army. So remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again.